Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent McCory from the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent McCory at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The Chinese government has announced plans to commence a trial of barter trade and investments with Nigeria and other African countries. Speaking at an event in China during the China-Nigeria Agricultural Meeting, the president of the China-Africa Economic and Trade Promotion Council, Mr. Zhu Jiangping, says the pilot phase of the program will offer a platform for assembling, selling and investing in Africa. Our correspondent, Sarah Effin, packaged this report from China.
It's the China-Nigeria Agricultural Matchmaking Meeting. Gathered here are officials from both countries. The meeting examines how trade can be more beneficial to both countries using policies and approaches that will offer new opportunities to the people.
Nigeria has made it very, very easy for Chinese investors to go to Nigeria and enter Nigeria. Without even coming through the embassy of Nigeria, you will land in Abuja or Lagos or Port Harcourt and find your way in what we call visa on arrival.
The executive director of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council uses the opportunity to market Nigerian products to the Chinese government, while an official of the central bank lists interventions by the Apex Bank to grow key commodities in the country.
I know you've heard so many stories about Nigeria, but I'm telling you the opportunities are bound more than any other country in Africa. And we're actually the giant of Africa. In terms of market, the market is there. In terms of products, the products is there. In terms of standards are there. And of course, there are several government regulations that are to protect investors and ensure that you get value for your money.
Trade businesses come with lots of benefits, and the Chinese government plans to cash in on this. The latest of its plans is to commence a barter arrangement for Nigeria and other African countries.
Business between Nigeria and China has been encouraging so far. We hope to improve on this going forward through barter trade system that will be beneficial to both countries.
A memorandum of understanding between Nigeria and China is then signed. This new partnership is expected to boost trade, create jobs, and support technology transfer between Nigeria and China while improving economic growth.
Let's get more on this. I'm joined on the program today by the Director, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you so much for joining us today on the program.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So what exactly is Nigeria hoping to gain from this agreement with China?
Well, Nigeria is, I think, the leading trading partner with China. The volume of trade, for instance, in 2022 was about 26 billion US dollars, which is perhaps one of the highest in Africa, if not the highest. So there's a whole lot that is taking place between China and Nigeria. And there's also a whole lot that is happening within the space of cooperation between Africa and China. You know, we have the Forum of Cooperation between China and Africa, that is the FOCAC. And a whole lot of discussions are going on as to how China can further support Africa, and Nigeria being the leading economy on the continent. There's a whole lot of opportunities for Nigeria in the relationship with China, both in the area of trade, technology transfer, funding, infrastructure development. There's a whole lot that is happening, and there's a whole lot more opportunities, particularly within the Belt and Road Initiative. This is a very robust plan by China. I mean, it's running up to trillions of dollars, to build cooperation around the world. And because of the status of Nigeria in Africa, I think Nigeria stands in a very good position to take a lot more advantage in this cooperation.
Right, so barter is a different thing altogether. What does Nigeria have to trade going into this arrangement, product-wise, and of course, manpower?
Well, the barter proposal is something that we need to further interrogate because it's a novel idea, which is not a bad idea. But we need to see the framework, we need to see the guidelines to see how that will work. Before now, we have had the currency swap between Nigeria and China. The currency swap was introduced in 2018, and it was to allow for trade of about $2.4 billion over 3 years or so. And 5 years down the line, we haven't made much progress within the context of the currency swap. Within that framework, I think the total volume of trade or value of trade is just about $1 billion over 5 years. So these initiatives are things we need to properly interrogate. Maybe a good idea, but the framework needs to be a lot clearer so that the deliverables can be easily achieved.
How do you suppose Nigeria investment can correspond with that of China, recognizing the fact that China has technological advancement more than Nigeria has?
The bulk of non-oil export trade, as we speak, is still in agro-commodities. So we need to bring a lot more technology into agricultural production, packaging, value addition, and all of that. And even standards, generally, storage, transportation, and all of that. The entire value chain of our non-oil exports requires a whole lot of investment so that you can bring them up to par and also expand both the scope, the volume, and the value of what we trade in the non-oil export area. As for the oil sector, of course, we are doing fairly well with regard to gas, with regard to crude oil and all of that. But the challenge for us as an economy is to go beyond oil and expand our space in the non-oil export arena.
And speaking of individual investors, how can they participate favorably, and how much do they stand to benefit as individual investors?
Trade is essentially between investors. It is not governments that trade. It is business people that trade. So all these things we are talking about in terms of opportunities that have been put on the table by the Chinese government within the framework of the Belt and Road. There's also the trade promotion initiative. There's an investment promotion initiative. There's a digital economy initiative. All that have been put forward by the Chinese government for African countries. So it is for our business people to take advantage, and even the amount of trade we have done so far is done by business people. So what is important is for us to create awareness among the business community, particularly those who are engaged in international trade, those who are engaged in exports, to be able to sensitize them as to what are the opportunities, what are the market information, what new opportunities are being presented by the Chinese government to promote Nigeria and Chinese trade. So it's a question of awareness. But the real trade, of course, is done essentially by business people. And of course, there are also bilateral relations between Nigerian government and the Chinese government, from which we have gotten a whole lot of support, especially in infrastructure development. So that is also going on alongside the issues of trade.
And how much of an impact do you suppose, this will have on the nation's economy and, of course, the stock market?
No, of course, it will have very, very significant positive impact, because we are talking about building the economy. First, trade has a whole lot of impact on the economy, because through trade you create a lot of jobs. Through trade you bring in a whole lot of machineries, equipment that can build productive capacity in the economy. And through bilateral cooperation, you also get support to build infrastructure, to build roads, railways, and all of that, airports. There's evidence of that all over the country and all over the continent. So there's a positive impact on the side of building infrastructure. There's also a positive impact on the fact that trade offers opportunities for Nigerian investors across sectors to be able to get products, equipment, machineries from China. And the good thing about some of these China imports is that they are very competitive when you compare it to what you have from Europe and America. So that is the beauty of it. So it helps to enhance the growth, the investment level in the economy.
I must thank you for your time today, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, amidst nationwide power outages, a South African court blocks a small town from using independent solar power. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. The small town of Frankfurt, South Africa, faces renewed power outages after a court ruled against the town's use of an independent solar electricity producer instead of the national utility Eskom. Eskom has struggled to keep the light on across South Africa, but threatened to cut off all power to Frankfurt when the town sought alternative arrangements. Jean Bonan reports from Frankfurt, South Africa.
Power to the people. That is what South African President Cyril Ramaphosa promised in his last State of the Nation address, amid the country's worst power cuts ever. But residents of a community in Free State Province say that was an empty promise after a High Court in April ruled against the town's use of an independent solar energy company to reduce power interruptions. The court said the town of Frankfurt, in contracting with the company, had failed to follow a number of technical and legal regulations. Now, residents and business owners will face renewed extended outages, while portions of the solar farms they were using will be shut down.
We still believe it's really unfair. The interest of the community was not considered.
The court ruling means that Rural Maintenance, the independent power producer, won't be able to enforce its own schedule of load shedding, the process by which power companies implement blackouts to ease the strain on their facilities. Rural Maintenance, using its solar farm, had reduced the power outages in Frankfurt from 4 hours per day to only 1.5. Local business owners, like Malarato Motsuneng, say the longer outages are devastating to small businesses in an area where unemployment is higher than the national average.
Remember, when there's load shedding, there's no signal. Remember, it's like you are incompetent, basically. And you cannot run a business without a phone, you cannot run a business without internet.
The CEO of Rural Maintenance, Chris Bosch, said the court ruling not only raised questions of regulations and laws, but highlighted a bigger problem.
I think what has sparked the outrage in South Africa is that people now realize that even if we have the money to put our own generation plant on the grid, then we still won't be able to use the electricity of that. We still have to reduce even further.
In a statement, Eskom said it welcomed the ruling, adding that it encouraged independent power producers to help alleviate the effects of load shedding in South Africa if they complied with regulations.
Guinea's national sports stadium buzzed with people seeking a different kind of workout this week as minds flexed and stretched in pursuit not of muscle gains but literary enrichment. The 15th edition of Guinea's 72 Hours of the Book Festival unfolded in venues across the capital, Conakry, bringing together a wide array of writers, publishers and readers from the West African country and across the continent.
The annual 3-day event is aimed at celebrating books and promoting literacy in a nation where over half the population is illiterate. According to World Bank figures, and access to libraries is limited. According to World Bank figures, and access to libraries are limited. Despite its low literacy rate, Guinea boasts a rich literary heritage and more than a dozen publishing houses. Most, however, struggle for funds to undertake large production runs. Those that do tend to focus on foreign works. But Conakry's arena transformed into a haven this week for readers clamoring to meet their favorite local authors, writers seeking to expand their audiences, and budding creators who took part in workshops. Learning things with games. Creating stories with things you yourself create in your own imagination. That's what I like, and that's what makes me come here. Spread across broad tables, works in French, English, Fulani, and a cross-section of local languages draw festival goers to local authors like Usmane El Haj, who for the last 3 years has used the festival to reach new readers.
Sudan has a rich archaeological history, boasting more pyramids than Egypt. At the University of Khartoum, women archaeologists are set to dominate the field, with more than 90% of archaeology students now female. Henry Wilkins reports from Khartoum, Sudan.
While Egypt might be the first place that springs to mind when it comes to pyramids, follow the Nile River further south to Sudan and you'll discover Meroe. They're arguably Sudan's most important archaeological treasure, and now female archaeologists are set to take the reins of studying them. Lina Hatem Ahmed is an archaeology student at the University of Khartoum.
In Africa and in Sudan, people are not aware of the importance of archaeology. Studying it is fun. We're enthusiastic about it, and it makes up a part of a rounded education. Archaeology subfields, too, help us develop a view of the world.
التوعية بها تكون أبعد من كده وبعدين لأنه الآثار لما تدرس الآثار يعني ما بس الآثار يعني علم الآثار ذاته بيشمل علوم تانية.
Yahya Fadil Daha leads the university's archaeology department, where 27 of 30 students are women. Women, he notes, often score higher in entrance exams.
The majority of students are females. Historically, women have always been a part of Sudanese life, and just like they were during the Meroitic civilization, they are participating in our civilization today.
So we have a long history that women are their freedom and they are participating in the society.
According to the UN, Sudanese women suffer multiple forms of discrimination and inequality. Some female students say they have had to overcome preconceived notions of gender roles to get into archaeology.
I meet some people that don't support my studies and keep telling me that this is against our traditions and religious beliefs. For example, they say, how can you travel to exhume bodies? So objections come from a lack of understanding.
كده ما بيسمح لنا إنه بيقولوا لك ما ينفع تسافري كيف أنت تمشي تنبشي قبور يعني دي بس الحاجة يعني شوية قلة يعني قليل يعني نقص في الوعي تجاه الدراسة دي.
But she says her family has always been supportive of her work. Fatma Abdurrahman says her family does not support her going on field trips outside of Khartoum and forbids her taking longer trips, which are often needed.
My family doesn't have a problem if I work nearby, but they definitely say no if I have to be away from home for a month. Also, working further afield is really difficult and tiring because we work for a full day, and in some places there is no internet or connection, so I can't communicate with my family.
بنكون شغالين 24 ساعة الشغل بيكون هو في حد ذاته شاق في حين إنه ذاته بعيد يعني ما بيكون في تواصل بينه وبين ناس البيت يعني في أغلب الأماكن.
Nonetheless, she hopes to continue her studies and become an archaeological tour guide so she can play a part in introducing Sudan's rich history to more people. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Khartoum, Sudan.
If you love to explore new dishes, then you might want to fly to Mexico to meet a Mexican chef who has been awarded the 2023 Best Female Chef in the world for her diversity when it comes to cooking. With her love for Mexican cuisine, Elena Regadas says the variety of ingredients in the meal is what makes the feeling extra special.
A key ingredient for Chef Elena Regadas' success is her Mexican roots, after being awarded the 2023 Best Female Chef in the world. The world's 50 best restaurants list last week granted the 46-year-old one of the top gastronomic accolades for being one of the key figures in the contemporary Mexican food scene.
Luego, pues a mí me gustaría que
I'd like this award to shed light on this country's large gastronomic culture. Not only the gastronomic culture, but also the large range of ingredients.
La vasta.
Located in the cosmopolitan Roma district, her restaurant draws the attention of both locals and foreign visitors alike. Regardas, who spent her formative years in the Italian restaurant Locando Locatelli in London, developed a technique that mixes Mexicanity and sustainability.
Podemos tener en una misma mesa un plato.
Each decision we take when we consume and decide from whom we buy and where we buy the ingredients have a direct impact on the countryside, on our culture and our history.
The award ceremony will be held in June and hosted at the City of Arts and Sciences Complex in Valencia.
Nearly 200 years ago, the U.S. government promised the Cherokee people a seat in Congress in exchange for their homelands. So far, it has not delivered. Today, the Cherokee people are calling for Congress to fulfill that promise, but there is a disagreement over which of 3 Cherokee tribes should get the delegate seat. Maxim Maskolakov has the story.
After forcibly removing the Cherokee Nation from their ancestral land nearly 200 years ago, U.S. President Andrew Jackson signed the Treaty of New Echota in 1835.
Article 7 of that treaty provides that the tribe is entitled to a delegate in the House of Representatives of the United States whenever Congress shall make provisions for that.
Now the Cherokee people want Congress to fulfill that promise and seat a delegate to represent them. Under House rules, delegates can sit on committees and introduce bills, but cannot vote in Congress. In a committee hearing in November, House Democrats and Republicans seemed open to the idea, although the panel did not act.
The members of that committee acknowledged that there was a promise, acknowledged that the promise was made to the Cherokee Nation, and acknowledged that the country needs to do the right thing.
But the answer is not so simple. There are now 3 federally recognized Cherokee tribes. The Cherokee Nation is the largest with at least 430,000 citizens. The 2 other tribes include the United Kituwa Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. In an email to VOA, Richard Sneed, principal chief of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, laid out the problem, saying, quote, "It is impossible to honor this treaty with the Cherokee people without involving and addressing all 3 tribes that now represent the Cherokee people." But Hoskin says the treaty only applies to his tribe.
The Cherokee Nation signed the Treaty of 1835. The Cherokee Nation signed the Treaty of 1866. After that, the Eastern Band was recognized. That's the other Cherokee tribe. In 1950, more than a century after the Treaty of New Echota and our removal, the United Kituwa Band was created by an act of Congress. So this idea that there are 3 tribes with an equal claim to the treaty is really nonsense.
If the Cherokee Nation does get a seat in Congress as proposed, it will join 5 delegates who represent the District of Columbia in 4 U.S. territories. Maxim Moskalkov for VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Do remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joke Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.